All right, we're live. Xavier, you there? Testing.
I don't know if my line is here
I can hear you.
or not.
Can you hear the music?
I can't. It's very faint. Yeah, it's super faint. Like you cannot move.
That's fine.
That's okay. All right, there it is.
How's that?
Yeah, that's
All right. That's why we do these testing things.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry for those of you listening. We've had a litany of technical issues, so we're going to go ahead and dial this music down and kick off the broadcast with, of course, our intro.
You're listening to the Zetetic newscast on the Zetetic News Network with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
Welcome to episode 45 of the Zetetic newscast. I apologize, we are very late tonight. We've had a litany of technical issues, which is going to mean perhaps degraded performance, and we're not going to open the call line tonight. But if you are listening live and you want to ask a question or comment, please drop a note in the YouTube comment box. We will take a look at that, and we will still happily award any participants who are able to make it in tonight with 444 Tfuel. Normally we limit that to like the fourth caller, but at this point, us being late and whatnot, I think anybody who comes in and asks a legitimate question or wants to contribute to the show, we'd be happy to share the wealth, so to speak. We also were supposed to have, sort of an end-of-year wrap-up. Xavier had a bit of a drama, getting into a bit of a fender bender.
Yeah.
And we postponed it, and then actually I moved it out another week because of some miscommunication, I think. And anyways, we're here. We've been chatting for a good hour. Unfortunately not live because I'm just running into a bunch of system issues, but not to belabor the point, we'd love to just jump right in like kind of where we were picking off. And originally this was like an end of year wrap up. We were going to kind of look back on 2023 and then talk about 2024, and I think we can still do that. Like, we're not that far into 2024 yet, although a lot has certainly happened since our last show. There's no shortage of things to talk about. The agenda that we had set back, I think this was originally supposed to go out December 20th or something like that. Was, some things to consider. These are just my thoughts. The Cerveza Virus revival, I think that's always kind of like on the tip of the propaganda machine's like tongue. You always, it's still with us. Like, it's still very much with us.
Still see people wearing masks.
Yeah. Obviously a lot has happened in the financial system. Continued financial upheaval, which we've talked about, kind of a core thread of our discussions. The whole development within crypto, the Bitcoin ETF, development, which we were talking about, pre live show, us, Xavier and myself just catching up here in the studio. The implication of AI, mass adoption on the economy, we were talking a little bit about that as well, and the whole Fugazi economic metrics and other happenings in the labor market, which has been an ongoing theme as well, you know, over the last several years. I also put the Space-Farce exposure as a key theme that like has been ongoing, I think, since at least we kicked off the Zetetic News Network. By the way, the first next generation news network powered by the Theta Network in 2018. I think there was a huge revival of discussion, questioning around the Space-Farce, which can include, in my opinion, like the whole UFO subject, which has just become passé almost, especially in the last 3 years, but also the incompetence and dishonesty and malfeasance of NASA, as well as cosmologically questioning the realm in which we dwell and discuss these matters, right? And then the last one, which is going to be on the tip of both our tongues, I think, for this show, I probably should have put it at the top of the list, but maybe save best for last, and that's I put it as Lost History Awakening.
Yes.
But like, that can take so many different forms. The one I'm hopefully, you know, if you're listening, you are aware of this as well. The whole revelation around underground tunnels and structures. I mean, we were talking about that like on some of our last episodes with respect to the whole Israel Hamas thing, and like these extensive, you know, 100-mile, 1,000-mile long tunnels that go beneath countries.
Yeah.
And
townships all over the United States that has them. You know, there's a small town in Illinois that has a huge tunnel system that goes under the bank and the school and all these various places. So the subterranean censorship topic has really blossomed amazingly to an extent that not even I could have forecasted. I mean, holy moly.
I've got several. I was over the holidays.
Got to see the visual component.
Over the holidays, I was blowing Xavier up with different memes that were coming out about this. Could you just there's maybe somebody who will come across this video who, and this is I didn't even mention the date. It's January 18th, 2024, episode 45 of the Zetetic News Cast.
Right.
Maybe someone will listen to this and they haven't yet heard of what we're talking about. These tunnels in New York.
Under the Chabad 770 Brooklyn.
Can you just summarize like what you know about the...
So, yeah, apparently, I mean, there was all these videos that surfaced on Twitter X of this altercation between law enforcement and the... students at the Chabad Shul, the headquarters in Brooklyn. And Chabad is an ultra-Orthodox kind of messianic, I would say kind of a subsection or a very prominent and influential cult, really, within Judaism. And the crazy thing was there was all these panels that were taken off the sides of the walls, and there were all these tunnels that were supposedly trying to be filled in right by the authorities to prevent structural damage and collapse and things like this. And that apparently the idea was that they had dug these tunnels to expand their synagogue during COVID. It's because they weren't allowed to worship or gather there. So this was like a secret way for them to engage in their religion.
Uh-huh.
Now, you know, if you believe that story, you know, I've got oceanfront property for you in Nebraska, but the broader point is really that there's a huge amount of infrastructure that doesn't really make a lot of sense within the historical record of how these cities came to be, how they're developed, the technology and personage and resources that were necessary to create this infrastructure, the subterranean censorship, tunnel aspect is really, it's gotten so, it's just completely bubbled onto, public awareness now. And, for what it's worth, it's, I think, a fascinating segue into the whole lost history topic.
Right.
The whole,
It's part and parcel to the type of programming that you get on Zetetic.news, because we have, I think, been very aggressive in creating different fundamental threads of our conversations that focus on areas of inquiry that we know the powers that be, so to speak, don't want to be discussed. That's like kind of in a nutshell our purpose, I think. We early on established, our perspective on the whole flat Earth versus globe Earth versus Space-Farce idea, and this is another one of those fundamental threads, and we've been talking about it for quite a while in the context of, like, say, deep underground military bases, advanced technologies. We've had guests on who claim to have firsthand experience with the secret space program, so to speak, but also covering other content creators who have really brought forth very valid information that deserves further examination on this subject of lost history. What is history? Are we being told the truth about the foundings of our country, our cities, our architecture? What are all these ruins about? Obviously, the pyramid has been, that's like kind of the most notable example of those sort of wonderings, if I could call it that.
Right.
But like, this is a whole new arena of inquiry that doesn't look to some far off desert. I mean, just speaking as an American, like, the pyramids are of some distant land, alien almost to what we daily experience. But I think there's as much inquiry deserved locally as there is far away in Egypt and
absolutely.
The Mayan temples, etc., away from where we're at. America is supposed to be this, like, new country, right? But, like, clearly more and more evidence is coming out daily, and we've joked offline about how sometimes we feel like we're, like, writing the script almost doing this show and just talking about what we're talking about. Obviously that's not true necessarily,
the uncanny valley, though.
But it's like it's surreal to speculate oftentimes about these topics, and then for them to materialize in the mainstream psyche. And just to expand on what you were saying, I was thinking about this because this is now mainstream. Like, this is the whole underground tunnel Jew thing. That's like a joke now. That's it's a meme.
Create themselves.
Yeah. It's made me, kind of revisit some of those topics that we've talked about on past shows. Like, we covered extensively, and it's really, we were alluding to a content creator, Mind Unveiled, who one of our commenters on YouTube mentioned. This is the first comment. Mind Unveiled just posted a great video on all these banquets in underground tunnels in the early 1900s.
Yep.
But they had an earlier, like a 2-hour expose of underground Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And if you're not familiar with ZNN, we're based in North Carolina. We focus a lot of our we try to relate, a lot of what's going on globally, quote unquote, to what's happening here and any kind of relation to that. And there's just a lot going on here right around us, and I think that's true everywhere. Like, it's just a microcosm of the macrocosm. But anyways, the focus of the Mind Unveiled video was on the Biltmore estate, and publicly admitted discussions, admissions, documents that show some kind of vast, extensive underground network in downtown Asheville, which, if you don't know, is a mountainous region, right? So, and was supposedly constructed in the late 1800s, and with primitive technology relative to what's possible today in terms of excavation, locomotion, etc.
Not that many people either.
You go there, of course, it's a very charming downtown atmosphere, you know, but you don't necessarily appreciate that there's an entire subterranean like infrastructure below that, which would have had to have been excavated before all of this development on top of it. The alternative to that is at some point after the development of the downtown, it was excavated after the fact, which takes even more specialized effort and machinery to do without destroying the buildings on top.
Right.
And then in the Mind Unveiled video, which we covered a subset of in one of our past shows, there was an admission by one of these local officials taking the camera crew around that it was actually tunnels discovered beneath the Freemasonic temple going all the way up to the Biltmore estate, which the Biltmore estate, the Mind Unveiled video did 2 hours just on that, being an anomalous construction for a variety of reasons we don't have the time to cover, but it's all there. You go there, and I've been there, you've been there.
I've been there.
You come away wondering how it was possible. That's your natural like inclination. But now I'm learning there's tunnel systems connecting all the way up to the steps underneath Biltmore to downtown Asheville. And it's known that like the money that the Vanderbilts brought into Asheville is responsible for like what ended up becoming Asheville. Okay, so I just did a simple Google Maps, which if you're just listening, we have a video component on YouTube and Zetetic.news. I'm showing the distance from the Biltmore to this Freemasonic temple they're talking about. That's at least 2.5 miles of subterranean network.
It's actually more because the actual estate there is southwest of that location at the Biltmore Village.
But that's just one line of the, you know, you're talking about dozens of miles,
right?
When you consider that they've admitted these various establishments in downtown Asheville, they're interconnected.
Right.
They all have their own tunnel segments that go who knows how far.
Right.
And this had to, I mean, and you mentioned in the contemporary example with this recent revelation in New York City, it was considered to be a relic of Cerveza Virus times. Like they dug this out to be able to get around and skirt around this, you know, which if any group knows how to perform a religious exemption, I would think the JEWs know how to do a religious exemption and get around that.
Right.
But like their excuse in Asheville, this is prohibition. So how long did prohibition last?
Prohibition, right.
You know, it was supposedly alcohol smuggling that was going. That's their hand wave explanation for it.
Which is, it's way cheaper and easier and probably more effective to just pay off local authorities to turn a blind eye than to literally bore tunnels for the purpose of smuggling alcohol. I mean, let's be honest. The people who are looking to run liquor are not going to invest. And how do you even do that clandestinely? So how do you even, pull off something like that?
I want people to go. I'm not going to play any of this, but there's a guy on YouTube, Colin Furs. He's an engineer, a fabricator, whatever. He has this channel where he does all kinds of crazy inventions. And one of his ongoing productions is the construction of an underground bunker in his suburban English home and a tunnel that connects from his house to that bunker and up to his shed.
Right.
And we're talking about a property that is no more than an acre total. An acre.
Right.
Now, and this is like after the fact excavation. He has to dig a hole starting in his house, go down a sufficient distance, and then dig it out all the way to this. So he has like 10 or 20 parts to this video where he actually develops specialized tools to be able to do this, like a hydraulic pick that enables him to actually pick away the clay.
Right.
Now, the explanation for how it's done in history is just numbers of slaves, basically.
Right. Grunt labor.
Yeah, he's using hydraulics, but he's just one guy. Of course, it takes a long time, but we just use grunt labor, to accomplish these incredible feats that seem totally impossible. But it's also the serious flaws in like the construction history narrative as well. Like, if it was easily explained, it could be easily explained, but instead they have to create these fictive narratives around how it was done, i.e. the pyramids and just number of slaves.
Taj Mahal. Right.
Yeah. Right. The history is actually replete with those examples where it seems more like a legend and less like a reality, a real documented fact.
Absolutely, because we have a limited purview for confirming the efficacy of any given piece of evidence, and like we've gone over in previous episodes the dubiousness of something like carbon dating and setting hard dates on things. We've done excavations.
Oh yeah. Just check this guy out in this whole series, because you get a sense. What I was bringing up is you get a sense from, okay, this is one guy. Yeah. There's all the caveats, but like when you see how much effort it actually takes, you begin and then you think about the distances of excavation
and the size
and everything. You get hopefully a sense of cynicism around what we're being told. But to your point exactly, and my point earlier about like the dubiousness of the historical record, this is a perfect segue to a topic I don't even think I included on the agenda, but probably should have. Something I was talking to my wife about this morning, and of course it's in the common discourse right now because of we have a cold snap in the country. There's a bunch of issues with the electric cars recharging, and anytime electric cars get brought up at all, in my experience, right, it all comes back to climate change, aka global warming, aka globe science, aka the science dogma of the day, and the propaganda campaign for this idea that human activity is going to create a global catastrophe, a world catastrophe of rising sea levels because ice caps melting. That's the ostensible reason we have electric cars today. Because if electric cars have existed for a long time, if they worked better overall, wouldn't they have already displaced the fossil fuel vehicles that we've been enjoying for 80 plus years?
Well, and the reality is you can get into the whole technological suppression history there too. I mean, there were arguably way more effective, efficient, lighter, better forms of transport that were created that were deliberately suppressed. But then this particular iteration of the electric technology that was able to be front run by these big insider corporations, like Tesla, etc. It's actually kind of an insult to the guy that the company's named after.
Right.
Tesla is noted for saying that he thought that automobiles are basically a retrograde transport technology, retrogressive in the history of transport. And because at the end of the day, it really is just a motorized horse carriage. You know, we're still on the ground. We're still kind of rolling around in the mud, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's not really as energy effective of a method for transport as we've been able to actually produce. I mean, there's all kinds of technologies out there that could really better all kinds of sectors, but they're, you know, kept in the back, you know, bought off patent filing cabinet by one of these megacorps for maybe a future date.
But like the ostensible reason governments are subsidizing electrical vehicles is not even because they're better, other than for the Earth.
Oh,
they're better for the Earth. They're not better,
which is false.
Vehicles.
It's
they're
proven false.
But they're both false. Like
yeah,
they're both false.
Exactly. Because I mean, think of the lithium.
Of course,
input.
You can. And then we were talking as well because you had your fender bender.
Right.
You had a hybrid vehicle, and I had a hybrid vehicle as well, where, you know, the battery could go bad within the first 10 years or less. And, you know, in some cases, you're paying more for the replacement than you pay for the car in the first place.
Right,
so,
right.
you know, you might be saving the Earth, is what I said, but you ain't saving money.
No.
Which is another false promise of those technologies, right? Is like you're going to somehow come out ahead, save money. But you don't have the benefit of, granted, they have less parts, maybe less to go wrong, but ultimately, you know, what can go wrong can cost more than the entire cost of the vehicle in some cases.
Right.
But you don't have the benefit of like 80 years of infrastructure development, you know, parts and gas stations, for example, and then also just the resiliency to weather. Like that's the issue happening now. The cold snap is changes the entire range of the vehicles themselves.
True, because you got to run the heater the whole time.
And in some cases, the chargers don't even work.
Right, and they're supposed to be these, you know, oh, you can get 3/4 charge in 45 minutes, but it's like
45 minutes.
That's what they say.
I can get 400 miles on my car
in 5
in 5 minutes, filling it up.
Right,
you know,
and then it's just this mythology that wars for oil, which there's some truth to that, but let's be honest. I mean, like North America, we've got probably 150.
Nobody needs to have a war. Like we can criticize that separately. We don't need to adopt electrical vehicles to end that issue, which is war for oil.
Right.
What if you think we invaded Iraq for oil? Like, give me a break. Like that was just like that's like the spoils. Like
right. That's the spoils of war. That's not the reason.
Yeah, that's a side hustle.
That's
a side hustle, basically.
Exactly.
Because
oil is the second most ubiquitous fluid ever.
Yeah.
There's trillions of gallons of it. I mean, come on.
I want to ask you a question, and I want to ask the viewers the question too. Comment below. And tell me what you have the least patience for. Entertaining the idea of a catastrophic ice cap melting. You know, just get vaccinated.
To help the climate,
right. You know, like what makes, I don't know, I'm so impatient now about this idea of climate change because they keep shifting the goalpost. It was global warming, now it's climate change, and I can't even like, I can't get on board with even agreeing that if the ice caps were to melt, which I don't think they will, that they are even ice caps. And if they were to melt, it would cause some sort of world catastrophe.
Oh.
Like,
no way. It would not. I mean, just look at the percentages of water. There's no way that it would make any kind of noticeable impact, even if all glaciers and ice caps melted. You could melt all of them.
Yeah, I had a conversation with ChatGPT about this, and I posed the question: if I fill a glass of water with water and ice to the brim, and then the ice melts, you have enough ice cubes to where the ice is floating above the water line of the glass,
right?
And then it melts. Does the water overflow? And of course it said no, because it's the same volume that gets displaced by the ice. And so then I'm thinking, well, why would, if the ice caps melted, they're sitting in the ocean already, displacing that water, affecting the sea level. If they were to melt, nothing would happen. It would be the same level.
Right.
And of course it said, well, the thing that affects sea level is the ice that is above water, and on land that would melt and flow into the water that would contribute to sea level change. And I'm like, well, how much are we talking about, basically? And it said 97.5% of the entire world's water is in the oceans
already.
So they estimate 68%, and again, we have to trust that they have some reliable assay of all the water that they say is either glacial, that's above, like on land, or permanent snow, or what was the other one? An ice cap, which is like the ice that I guess can cover a body of land. And that is 68% of the world's fresh water. And I'm like, but okay, so fresh water only makes up 3.5 or 2.5% of all the water. So we're talking about 68% of 2.5%.
So less than like 1 3/4% or something.
Yeah, well, like 1.3 or 1.7%, something like that, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Of the total water.
Uh-huh.
So we're obsessed with the complete melting, which is dubious.
It's not, yeah.
A dubious question.
Yeah. Well, but it's all like, what about groundwater too? I mean, how
well, that's the other thing. It's like
we don't have a full inventory of all water that exists.
Also, the various cavern systems,
right,
which can receive water, right, and constitute. So, I just think there's more to how the world works than they lead you to believe.
Well, there you go again. Sea level. That doesn't make any sense on a giant ball.
Doesn't.
Yes.
There's no level.
There's no. There would no be. You would have to say that all sea level is actually not level. It's actually sidelong and off camber and antipodally oriented and or situated on a contiguous curvature that conforms to a discrete circumference. But when you actually measure that, it's total poppycock. It's literally level from shore to shore.
Well, I think this is why I got off on this. I got off on this jag because we were talking about lost history and the dubiousness of the architectural, the city foundings narratives, the construction narratives around our metropolises, and other anomalous like constructions like the pyramids and Biltmore and Taj Mahal. This whole idea of the world temperature average raising is worth questioning, because if we don't even have a full documented history of the construction of Asheville, North Carolina, how can we possibly believe what they say about what the world average temperature was 100, 200, 300 years? I don't even know who my ancestors are 200, 300 years ago. And you're telling me they have some sort of assay on what the temperature was like in this part of the world 300 years ago? Well, they estimated it, there is science being done on that, and I'm like, oh, well, what is that exactly? You're talking about ice cores, right? Like the most controlled area of our entire realm, Antarctica, where no one can explore, and it's only governments, military, and chartered organizations for approved purposes are drilling into the ice and then doing a little science in the lab and surmising what the temperature was based on what data. Like, even if you look at the history of the thermometer, how old is it? It's not even 100 years old. Yeah. And then you think about how the thermometer has changed technologically from then till now. And then, sure, we have more thermometers deployed around the world than ever before. I'll grant that. But well, I'm talking about 300 years ago. And even 50 years ago, you didn't have the kind of resolution that you would need to make these grand proclamations about where the Earth as a whole on average has been and where it should or should not go.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't have thermometers at different intervals all over the world. They have them in select locations where people live.
Right. It's not like it's a full inventory.
Not at all.
The actual fluctuation of temperatures across each distinct region or geography. They don't. They have a highly smoothed over, kind of generalized depiction that they graph. But again, like you've seen the whole like Ocasio-Cortez, showing the hyperbolic, sort of peak oil and global warming, fear mongering in Congress, and the guy's like, "Oh yes, we were very good scientists. We had prophetic powers to predict the path of global temperatures based on our amazing measuring chartism." And it's all there, of course, to prop up the legitimacy of the pseudoscientific charlatanry matrix, and continue to reify all of these narratives about what the world is and what we should be concerned about, and why we need to weaponize our observations and conversations about weather, and turn it into a hot button political issue, and make it a matter of how much we need to be taxed more in order to atone for the sin of breathing and pooping and being humans. And that we're on spaceship Earth, the mothership, the only place we got, and we gotta batten down the hatches and tighten the belts and go into hyper austerity mode, and relinquish all of our control to WEF and Harari, and just accept that we really are just hairless apes, that need to be distracted into oblivion until we've been completely outmoded and rendered obsolete by better biotech organisms that don't have to rely on all of the frailties of the organic life form we call the human. So yeah, that kind of is all bracketed in the discussion about climate change. It's all accepted to a certain point by anyone who talks about it, regardless of how much you gripe about, oh well, we don't need to be taxed that much, or I do like my fossil fuel vehicle. It's like these are kind of like petty trivialities on the surface that people are supposed to bicker about, but the manufactured consensus that's again given to everyone on a scientific platter through the expertocracy, that this is the underlying thing you need to agree about. This is the bipartisan consensus of what we need to be concerned about, and it's this scarcity psychosis that is apocalyptic in its vantage point, and it's dovetailed in with all this technotronic Malthusianism and deep misanthropy, and that project of technocracy is actually informed by an occultic, ritualistic orientation to how human activities and societies are supposed to be managed. And I think that the world is beginning to... Many people are becoming more, at least, open-minded or introduced to these concepts. But we have a long way to go for people to really understand the full gestalt of what's occurring in the present hour of the 21st supposed century that we're in. And really the principle of extending the benefit of the doubt to the established authority consensus mechanisms is waning. I think that is a good thing, and ultimately it's part of a broader consciousness revival that I think will unseat far more aspects of the current power structure than what people are accustomed to talking about, whether that's politics or...
That's why it's exciting to be alive right now.
Yeah, because
and has been, because I've been waiting for this moment.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's here yet per se, but you can see the machinations. That's what I was talking about earlier. Is it feels like sometimes we're writing the script in a way. We'll have a show, we'll have a discussion, and we're just talking about what's top of mind, like to us. And I guess we have, our finger on the pulse well enough to know what to some extent what's on the collective mind of people. I personally, I just think I'm just attracted to what's the most fascinating aspect of the current discourse. Right before Cerveza Virus happened, there was this gigantic climate change push, which we talked about at the time being a distraction from the whole Epstein thing. But it's interesting how those themes are still in the mainstream.
Absolutely.
How many years later? It's 4 years later since we had those, which is really hard to believe. But the whole Epstein thing is now passé. We
were still discovering more facets to it,
and still are.
But
the whole... When did we talked about Stephen Hawking multiple times in the last 5 episodes, and at the time he was still regarded as this
penultimate genius,
penultimate genius, accomplished mathematician, theorist, philosopher, almost this academic, highly regarded professor, right? And now he's a laughingstock because for the uninitiated, I don't know if I'm sure you've heard, but there were allegations in court, true or not, they could not be true, right? Innocent until proven guilty. All we have is hearsay evidence, like testimony, but they were under oath, right? Penalty of perjury. That he liked. What were his proclivities on Epstein Island? And I guess it was confirmed that he was there, right? This intellectual depravity, right? This is the kind of sadism you would see with maybe somewhat too book smart person. I guess I don't know. He liked to have undressed midgets solve complicated math problems on a too high chalkboard. It's like a sick joke.
Yeah.
Like something he would want to see written in a movie to get a laugh.
It's like an Austin Powers.
And I just wonder what was paid for such services. I bet it's a lot lower than people would expect.
Well, and the other side of it is it kind of dovetails in with the occult thespian research line, which is How many Stephen Hawkings were there?
That's what I brought up to my wife talking about this, because it penetrated her psyche, you know, because of all the memes, which we've been talking about. The memes are the true mind virus of the resistance, in my opinion.
Wait, how many multiples years longer did he live with ALS than the last world record holder?
It's like the whole Magic
What is
Johnson story.
what
When,
is it
when
like-
you're a person of influence, you can get special treatments that'll keep you alive.
Yeah, existential luck that is statistically basically impossible. I mean, I think he outstripped the record by 9 times.
Well, maybe there's something to what Alex
10
Jones has said.
times?
The elite have the good vaccines. They know the good
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
They avoid the bad ones.
I think what's probably more alarming and a blacker pill to swallow is that there's just a bunch of phenotypes out there that highly resemble each other and are all susceptible to similar neurodegenerative conditions, and that could be an engineered
Paradigm.
an engineered paradigm, essentially, that certain genotypes and phenotypes, you know, there's only a certain amount of expression multiplicity within the species. So
I know that to
Yeah.
be true because I was on a whitewater rafting trip one time with my family, and there was if you've ever been a river guide on another boat who looked just like this guy in our neighborhood. And then when we got close, he wasn't our guide, he was someone else's. We got closer to him. He sounded like him. He had the same mannerisms as him. We even heard some of the jokes he was telling his boat, dirty jokes like the guy in our neighborhood would tell. And we were all simultaneously like blown away. It wasn't like one person brought it up and then there was a debate about it. Like everybody immediately agreed that looked just like Mike from the neighborhood. So holy shit, is that Mike? Is that where Mike's been on the weekends? You know, like we joked about it, and the conclusion was there's only mathematically, it's almost a certainty that you eventually have. Well, if it didn't exist, we wouldn't have a word for it. The doppelganger,
right.
you know. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's just various estimates, but there's probably close to 100 people out there that look just like you worldwide. You know, any given person, there's up to 100 people that look spitting image like you. Maybe, I mean, in terms of exact look-alike, like dead ringer, maybe more like a dozen.
But
But
they're
they're there. They're there worldwide. I mean, we brought up that article of those 2 red-haired guys who were twins in the wild. They're completely totally different parents, no common family history to speak of, and they're dead ringers.
Well, that's like why people, you know, and they should speculate. You know, we should be asking these questions about history and whatnot. Like, but there've been a bunch of like past historical figures who look like contemporary figures. You know,
right, and but that's that effect. Is that genetically there's only a certain amount of variation in genetic expression.
so like there's this 3,000-year-old Egyptian bust, and I mean, my man looks just like Michael Jackson
Right.
at the end of his life, you know, and so people look at that and they're like, is he reincarnate?
time travel.
Is he a time traveler? You know, there are examples of that where it looks like, you know, I don't know. There's examples out there of like Mike Tyson showing up in past pictures, or there's someone with a cell phone in an era that
Right.
shouldn't have a cell phone. You know,
And
that
there's
sort
all
of thing.
these, Hollywood movies and stuff that are bandied about as fiction. That's all about, intelligence communities using lookalikes for all kinds of operations and missions and stuff. And that's supposed to be, fanciful and fantasy, but it's more likely that it's a revelation of the method. Just, kosher disclosure kind of thing, where, we can represent this as entertainment and fantasy and fiction, but it's kind of letting people know the kind of ace we have up our sleeve as the establishment, as the power structure, etc. And I think the whole world as a stage is not just a trite metaphor. It's actually kind of a literal vector of control.
I've actually begun to believe that, because another thing that I think we were a little bit ahead of the curve on, and that is, you brought it up, I forget how early, the whole occult thespian thing. So I think we were pretty on top of what we termed Hologram Joe.
Oh yeah, that was like a manifestation of kind of our line of research. I mean, in hologram is kind of like a tongue-in-cheek.
Yes,
a little bit.
It was a joke. It was an inside joke, essentially.
It's an inside joke a little bit.
But it's a catch-all.
It's a catch-all
for a synthetic representation of this Joe Biden caricature.
Right.
This character. I think hologram might have been accurate in some
displays.
Certain displays.
Right.
You could call him
CGI Joe.
CGI Joe.
Right.
Zoom Joe.
Zoom Joe. Right.
Because remember, this was 2020.
2021.
Right?
2021.
This is Cerveza Virus peak, where Zoom was booming, that company.
Right.
Video conferencing. This is the wave of the future. And of course, this is a whole other subject, the AI takeover, the VR takeover, the AR takeover, the digitalization takeover. Mm-hmm. That was a major step in the right direction. The creation of the environment to get people conditioned and accepting of a more digital existence. Right. It was an extension in my retrospectively, and it was an extension of the legacy TV era of propaganda, where this whole image of the president, so to speak, just as an example, was really curated and fomented on TV. Now we have the next iteration of that, which is the CGI Joe, the hologram Joe,
or the World Health Organization.
We're not even going
CDC,
we're not even going to really try hard anymore to fake it well in a televised manner. We're actually going to let you know. We're going to show you that he's a bumbling, incompetent clown, also potentially a rubber mask wearing actor.
Right.
And I actually think I've come to believe that I think they love us having this debate.
Sure.
Or it's not a debate, I'm not debating you necessarily, but this discussion, it is a debate in the discourse. The discussion, the wondering, they actually like that. I think they like that in a sick way. They like the public seeing it and sensing it and kind of knowing it, and maybe willing to bring it up and have joking discussions. But at the end of the day, you and me are guilty as well. We come away, we have nothing to do about it but talk about it. And so in a way, it's kind of like the whole adage of there's no such thing as bad publicity. At least they're still talking about it. They're still talking.
Right.
We've shown our hand, but it's part of that humiliation ritual, which he was installed.
Right.
He was an installed bumbling moron. Granted, there was a lot of artificially created hate towards Trump at the time, but for whatever reason, the power structure decided, we're gonna shove Biden down your throat,
right?
Rather than the alternative, shoving Trump down your throat.
Right.
For whatever, we could talk about that too, what those ulterior motives may or may not be, and where we're headed with 2024, which is very, very
ominous,
ominous and poignant time to be having this show.
100%,
right? Because
you're right. I mean, in terms of the continuation of the 2020 mega singularities, it seems like the 2024 mega singularities are condensing at a rate that we probably couldn't have anticipated, but we're still, finger on the pulse, trying to measure it and follow it in some, esoteric kind of manner, synthesizing and grokking all these kind of seemingly loose ends and seemingly isolated threads. But in point of fact, they're part of a broader tapestry of control that is actually integrated on levels that we've basically been programmed to not think about and not think on a certain level that can see the synthetic integration of these disparate, or seemingly disparate ends, whether that's the everything from the economy.
Well, let's take a bio break.
Yeah.
A real quick one, and then come back on that note, because one of the other major topics I wanted to discuss was the looming financial tumult. It's not even looming; it's ongoing.
It's ongoing. We're in the
Uh,
middle of probably the last breath of the topping formation on a 15-year artificially induced mega bubble that's unprecedented.
And I thought we had a good discussion pre-show about the whole Bitcoin
ETF, and there's some
Dollar
nuances within that, because just like what we were talking about before the show, an ETF is a little bit of incorrect moniker. It's technically an ETF is a type of ETP, which is an exchange traded product, and within ETFs there are a number of different things: ETN, ETC. So if you actually look into the specifics of what the SEC approved in terms of Bitcoin, it was these huge Wall Street players coming in and essentially launching products that have already been available to European populations, Asian populations. It's not actually a new product. It's a cash creation ETC CDO. It's a collateralized debt obligation. Yes, they have to populate some of the ETF with that singular commodity basket. However, it's not an in-kind redemption method. It's a cash creation method, which is, in that sense, it's really not a new product. These products have already existed. They just haven't been hosted by the huge $1 trillion plus hedge funds. That's the only thing that's different, is now these huge $1 trillion fiat behemoths are coming after Bitcoin. And look at what happened when the futures launched at the beginning.
It wasn't a big pump after that.
No, it was actually that was the 2018 bear market. The futures ETFs launched,
and I believe it was the former chairman of the Commodities
CFTC,
Future Trading Commission said that at that time he and the Secretary of Treasury Steve Mnuchin with Trump deliberately tried to, quote, pop the Bitcoin bubble.
and they did for some time, and then
But it
Cerveza
proved not to be a bubble if we're looking through the lens of from then to now, because I mean, maybe it is still in a bubble,
right?
you know?
You could make the case.
You could make that case. But they didn't pop it permanently.
Oh no, because Bitcoin is resilient in terms of deflationary fundamentals. However, well, we'll get into that in the second half.
Yeah, we're going to take a quick break, then we'll be back to continue this discussion around the ongoing financial tumult, what's happening in crypto, in fiat, in financial markets, in the broader economy, the regulatory landscape, etc. Thank you for joining. This is Xavier Demont and Dave with Zetetic.news. time to start back. Thank you for tuning in. We're back. Your hosts, Dave, myself, and Xavier Diamant. We were just having a discussion about pivoting away from climate change, lost history, a little bit of Cerveza Virus, occult thespianism, the digitalization of society, and what's to come, you know, in terms of the collective psyche towards the inquiry of these sorts of topics. And we turn our attention to the economy, which is just human activity, but more poignantly finance, which is how we as a species decide what to do in the future. You know, squirrels save nuts so that they can live another day. We save dollars, yes, to live another day, but also to evolve as a society and innovate and invent and create art and all that. And it's been hijacked. And one of the, again, fundamental topics that has undergirded Zetetic.news is the crypto development. It's one of those topics that clearly the powers that be don't want discussed unless it's discussed and couched in the terms that they want to dictate.
Right.
I have a little clip actually. Where did I don't know where my Instagram went, but I think it would be a good, you know, like as we pivot into this discussion, you were getting into the Bitcoin ETF development, because that's been discussed a lot in the, oh, you know where it was? In Telegram. It's been discussed a lot in the crypto community and the broader financial TradFi paradigm. And JP Morgan, one of those, what did you call them? The fiat behemoths of the current historical legacy traditional financial system. Jamie Dimon, he's been there like 20 years, CEO. He's been on the board of the Fed. Clear inside lackey hack job for the TradFi system. He has a history. This Zero Hedge article goes into some of the things he said in the past. You know, that Bitcoin's a tulip bulb. There's no security in the finite supply equation. It has no underlying value, and of course, it needs to be discussed. What did he know all along? And those were, you know, these people think ahead. They think intergenerationally, right? And he is just a front man. So he's not really saying anything that he's not allowed or permitted or to say, in my opinion. So, you know, if we take him as an honest person, and he was being honest early on in Bitcoin's introduction and popularization, then he's obviously a hypocrite now, as many TradFi people are with this Bitcoin ETF. Well, now it's got that stamp of approval, that SEC certification. You know, it's a regulated product. It's within the TradFi system. It's kosher, right? So in a way, he's eating crow, you know, vis-a-vis his past comments. But I do wonder if he was being honest initially, or honest now, or honest never. You know, and we're just being sort of carrot on a stick, guided in the direction that they want to take us. But here's the clip.
Yeah, but gold's limited in supply.
So is Bitcoin.
And it's been used. So you think so, huh?
I do.
I think there's a good chance that when we get to that 20 million Bitcoins,
they go to 42.
No, that Satoshi's going to come on there, laugh hysterically, go quiet, all Bitcoin's going to be erased.
I think, man.
How the hell do you know it's going to stop at 21? I've never met one person who told me they know for a fact they take that
mathematically, it can't happen because.
Of course, he was going on to say that the code is written this way, right?
Well, and that's supposedly a checkmate to, not even Satoshi can change these 5 lines of code. Well, wait a second. You just admitted it's only 5 lines of code. You could change 5 lines of code.
Right.
You can't do it arbitrarily. You can't just not like the way that they use the money printer and the whole Cantillon effect. But if, for example, there was essentially a bear hug over the mining power over the network, say, many years down the road, these fiat behemoths are able to essentially bear hug the mining to where they have more than 51% of the hash rate. They could technically fork the network.
And this is something Matthew Cratter, a well-known Bitcoin maxi, acknowledges is theoretically possible. He just doesn't think it's likely to happen.
No.
And
I mean, if you would have said, well, what's the likely in 2019? Beginning of 2019, what's the likelihood that within a year's time, the entire world economy is going to be shut down and oil is going to be at a negative price,
and people will voluntarily close their businesses because they believe in the public health threat that's promoted by their government.
Right. So, I mean, if they can get away with that kind of mass media push, and imagine what they could do with, taxing Bitcoin miners or something unless they're ESG compliant. This is going to be one of the great ways that, just like with electric vehicles, we can curb environmental damage by tokens that are really just like energy securities. Well, that just needs to go away. Let's keep blockchain and have a bunch of centralized corporations manage that. But we can't have this proof of work stuff anymore. I mean, that might seem unlikely now, but just like it would be unlikely back in 2020 if you're gonna ask people in 3 years' time, is there going to be a artificial intelligence launch that could displace 50% of human workforce within a decade? That didn't seem likely 4 years ago, but people are talking about it now, right? Because the genie's been let out of the bottle. So this idea of it's theoretically possible, but I don't think it's very probable because I have a belief perseverance complex and conflict of interest in analyzing my investment. That I just don't think that's it's kind of a rose-tinted glasses sort of point of view.
To me, it indicates a low imagination quotient,
and just kind of putting a premium on naivete and poo-pooing skeptical or kind of cynical, problematic monkey wrenches that could be thrown into the mix. And I just don't think you can I don't think that you can count out those possibilities, especially in this day and age. So I mean, and it's kind of like another really good comment that's in this line of thinking is Whitney Webb's recent discussion with Natalie on Natalie Brunell's channel, and she's kind of like a pro Bitcoin kind of crunchy kind of hippie gal who's like all into freedom. She's kind of a libertarian type. But Webb brings up a good point, and she's like, could Bitcoin basically have been a Trojan horse, essentially, all along, for the financial system to rehypothecate debt and transfer a lot of the bad behavior from the present Wall Street system into this new digitalized system? And are we going to let that happen? Or is Bitcoin, has it always truly been this immaculately conceived, democratizing, financial solution to the world that makes everything better?
Yeah, we've talked about the revaluation theory. Bix Weir, we even had him on the show early on in our development. He believes in a revaluation, although not of the Nasara-Jassara concept. He actually disputes that, but that and I think everybody senses that there has to be some kind of revaluation process. The question is, before the question, I think inherently is a creative destructive event, meaning that to create something new, something has to be destroyed. The question is what's being created and what's being destroyed. And I think there's it's been growing for years and years, but it's reaching a crescendo, a growing sentiment, a climaxing sentiment that we want the traditional finance system to be destroyed. That was the whole GameStop thing, right? This silver squeeze, that whole sentiment. Even the BRICS, development, where the petrodollar is being challenged. A change is desired across the board. So in a sense, the traditional financial system has to be destroyed. But I think it's foolhardy. I mean, I think everybody knows that they're not going to go down without a fight. They're not going to try to be the ones creating or even guiding the destruction. And that's part of Bix's theory, although I don't think it's for... I hesitate that the creative destructive process is being guided by good guys.
Yeah.
That is part of the whole Nasara-Jassara thing, which again Bix disputes.
But he still retains
that concept that there's some shadowy white hat group, which we've talked about a lot, like white hat, black hat, and then you brought up red hat. And I'm not... I've been around this whole community of information long enough to know that it's a mistake to find yourself in a position of comfort thinking that some white hat group has got this all under control and it's just a matter of time before it all works itself out.
Right.
And
I mean, that was shown in Anatoly Golitsyn's book, New Lies for Old, that there was basically a fake, or at least a limited hangout loyalist group to the Tsar in the Bolshevik Revolution that was actually shown to be bought off by the powers and the financial behemoths that were backing the Bolshevik putsch in Russia over 100 years ago, and that sort of limited hangout loyalist guard that was going to bring back the Tsarist aristocracy and overthrow the brigands of social revolution. Well, it was just a pacification propaganda mechanism. It was never designed to actually be legitimate. You might have had people involved in it who really did want the Tsarist aristocracy to be reinstated, but the whole aim of the movement was to just wait around until the inevitable result came through, which was never going to be in their favor.
Right.
So you see a lot of these kind of movements today.
It's the Delphi method, essentially.
It is the Delphi method,
which we've talked about before. That method of engineering consent, essentially, for a predetermined agenda.
Right.
And actually, it brings me to a clip that was posted in the Telegram. I'm not sure if it was you or someone else. If you're not on the ZNN Telegram, go to Zetetic.news and look for the join Telegram button on the right-hand side.
I'm going to enjoy chewing this guy up. He's a lead ideologue.
But you listening to him? This is, what is his name? Noah Harari?
Yeah, Yuval. Yeah.
He's talking, Yuval, Noah Harari. Yeah, so I don't even know what this was in response to specifically, or even what this publication is. But he's like a WEF lackey ideologue. Maybe talk for a second about who he is. What is his position of influence exactly?
He's basically an acolyte of Klaus Schwab and Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt and all these, Ray Kurzweil to an extent. He's sort of a transhumanist technocrat, apologist, and demagogue. He was one of the leading spokespersons for the WEF, transnational governance putsch, basically saying, look, technology is changing at such a rapid rate that our biggest concern now is, how we're going to stave off mass death amongst humankind because of our impending obsolescence in the face.
But this is a guy who, in this clip, and this is a subset of the overall clip, just hand waves the entire idea of conspiracy theory, again, that CIA term, right? Like how they just can't possibly exist, and this whole idea of a creative destructive event, which is guided on the front and back end by the pre-existing status quo. It's ridiculous. It's too chaotic. It's too complex. Just listen to this guy. He's having clearly an emotional outburst. And he's been triggered by somebody. I don't know if they were questioning climate change or they were questioning, homosexuality. I don't know. But he got kind of mad.
Oh, he would definitely get mad on both of those fronts.
I will also say another thing. The conspiracy theories, they do get one thing right, certainly in today's world. I think they represent an authentic and justified fear of a lot of people that they are losing control of their lives, they don't understand what is happening. And this, I think, is not just a legitimate fear, this is an important fear. They are right. We are losing control of our lives. We are facing really big dangers, but not from a small cabal of fellow humans. The problem with many of these conspiracy theories, that yes, we have a problem with new AI technology. But if you now direct the fire against certain people, so instead of all humans cooperating against our real common threats, whether it's the rise of AI, whether it's global warming, you're only causing us to fight each other. And I think that the key question that people who spread these ideas, many of them, they honestly believe, it's not malicious, that they honestly believe in these theories, is do you want to spend your life spreading hate towards people, or do you want to work on more constructive projects? I think one of the big differences between those who believe in conspiracy theories and people who warn about the dangers of AI, the dangers of climate change, we don't see certain humans as evil and hateful. The problem isn't humans.
What?
The problem is something outside humanity. Yes, humans are contributing to the problem, but ultimately the enemy is external to humanity. Whereas conspiracy theories usually claim that a certain part of humanity is the source of all evil, which leads them to eventually think in terms of exterminating
Oh my god.
this part of humanity, which leads sometimes to historical disasters like Nazism.
So it can lead to hate, but can also lead to cynicism,
was
apathy
Alex.
It's
that
Alex.
basically says it's not in my power to make the world better. So you don't actually take action.
I think it is within the power of every individual to make the world a little bit better. You know, you can't do everything, don't try to do everything. Find one
like
thing
a Green Gots banker.
in your areas of activity, a place where you have some agency, and try to do that. And hope that other people do their bit. And if everybody do their bit, we'll manage. And
You notice they never say or criticize people who entertain conspiracy theories. It's always believe conspiracy theories. And they have to use the term theory because there's, it would be too damning and hypocritical of them to say conspiracy facts. He has such a gross oversimplification of the subject.
Totally. I mean,
Are you denying, Mr. Harari, that there's never been a conspiracy theory among a small cabal of people? Isn't a bank robbery that? Are they not a source of evil, right? Someone with the Italian Job, that whole movie. People conspiring to steal stuff from someone else.
right.
That happens all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time.
It is innate to humanity. What he said,
Something that's outside.
it's external humanity. Well, could you
Nonsense.
could you identify? What are you talking about exactly?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, where else does evil come from in the world? I mean, a bear mauling you because you're wandering into his territory? I don't understand. We're the only beings who can conceptualize or articulate the conceptualization of evil. So, of course it has to come from us. It has nowhere else to come from. What are you talking about?
Right. And this guy's supposedly coming from an atheistic, technocratic point of view, really kind of a secular humanist derivative. And he's saying there's something external to humankind. Is he talking about aliens? I mean,
I know.
It's what?
Where is he coming from? He made a goal.
I will also say another thing: present fear.
He made
a lot of people that they are losing control of what is happening.
Well, that's
that was
psychologizing
insulting. This
fallacy.
whole thing about
That's
people losing control of their life. It's almost like kind of a backhanded insult.
It is because
I don't feel like I'm losing control of my life.
No,
I don't have control necessarily of many external factors that I criticize and observe and would like to have changed. But I mean, I still maintain a certain modicum of control over my life. It's a backhanded insult, but he made a gulp when he said, it seemed like he was really hurt by the insinuation that, some people would take issue with the existence of a small cabal of people who would make decisions that do trickle down and impact negatively your life, and he called them fellow humans.
right?
And it's they are fellow, I guess, if we agree they're human. But your later comments about it being external to humans, are all these all the criminals and the conspirators in the world, conspiracy to commit crime, that's in the legal code,
yeah,
that's in the code, so it happens. Are we to just absolve them of all moral judgment?
This is the whole defense attorney pill pull of it's very hard to prove malintent.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, well, we're just going about our daily business. We're just all in the same boat together. We're all human, baby. There's no right. There's no wrong.
Right.
There's no willful misconduct. We're just the blind leading the blind here. I mean, that's the kind of the implication.
That's what it feels like.
And it's like, oh, that's a convenient way to absolve people of wrongdoing.
Yeah, like
That's very convenient.
while you're attending WEF conferences with a small cabal. I mean, think of percentage terms. The percentage of influence relative to the percentage of numbers of people.
It's like 1,000.
At WEF, it's insane. Like, you literally are hurt because people are critical of you
Yeah, 'cause
and
they're
your
noticing
ilk
things,
and your
right.
ilk.
Right.
That, like, you're clearly like defensive.
Well, yeah, and just
It makes me wonder why he would come on Lex, other than to have just a platform to spew bullshit to the low IQ. I mean, honestly.
well, yeah, Lex is having him on to humanize the ideology that he represents, even though it's anti-human in nature.
Is this a recent thing? Because he just had Zuckerberg on. Now he's got this guy on. Like, what is this?
It's basically a establishment fellatio tour.
Why isn't he working with Ben Shapiro yet?
Well, I think that they're buddies. I think that they, probably hobnob and do all kinds of stuff together. But
They got any tunnels?
probably, honestly. The thing about Lex is he tries to present himself as this like very friendly interlocutor, but he ends up just being this kind of milquetoast fillator of whoever's on there. He doesn't ever push back or provide critical feedback for any of the ideas that are being expressed. He's just like this go along to get along, like little gopher for the establishment.
Yeah, here's a real comfy environment.
Here's a comfy environment.
I've got this big audience of supposed intellectuals who you can proselytize to, basically.
Well, and this guy, it's like
I couldn't listen to the whole thing with Zuckerberg.
Well, what we need is one of those side by side transformer montage memes where it starts as one person and it gradually transmogrifies into another person,
Like Animorphs.
Exactly. Like
You remember
it's
that
like an
that
Animorph
series?
meme. Yeah. We need an Animorph meme of Jordan Peterson Animorphing into this guy.
Yeah.
Because they're actually very close ideologically. They may rhetorically sound different, but if you excavate the assumptions and the epistemology and the philosophical undergirding beneath all of their opinions, it's like neocon versus neolib.
I don't know
really
how this
not
guy
that
makes
much
his
difference.
money. I don't know how he makes his money.
Publishing deals, speaking tours, confabs,
Same kind of grift as
similar grift as Peterson, actually.
Okay.
Similar
Just kind
grift.
of different audiences.
Just different audience. Harari is more the Lexus liberal ivory tower kind of gated community self-flagellator kind of audience. People, Xers, maybe young boomers, people who have established themselves and have all this manufactured, propagandized guilt built up about needing to save the planet and not be racist and, et cetera, et cetera. And then Peterson is kind of the other end of the middle, which is traditional values and, we got to go back to this, that, and the other tradition. And they may appear different rhetorically, and they are distinct rhetorically. But if you actually excavate their backgrounds, who they've worked for, their various opinions on science especially, very similar. They would actually probably have a very, simpatico conversation.
Yeah.
They and that's the thing is the culture mill today is seemingly more polarized, right? There's on the rhetorical level and in terms of optics and like talking points and stuff, there is kind of superficial polarization, but actually there's deep philosophical consolidation going on.
Yeah, you heard him bring up climate change.
But there you go.
Which ties back to a lot of our discussions and how all this this ideology is intertwined with one another. and he almost can't help himself. Clearly, that must be one of the agendas in his promotional repertoire that he's most concerned about its sustainability. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought it up. Like, he wouldn't have brought that up as an example of an area where, quote unquote, conspiracy theorists are triggering him. You know?
Or clearly also triggering him on the front of, hey, we're kind of noticing that there's a certain makeup of this cabal and that there's a lot of simpatico and nepotism going on here pertaining to the identity. We can't notice that because we're going to have extermination.
Yeah. He invoked the Nazi card, the Hitler card.
Oh, me thou dost protest too much, Mr. Harari. Are you letting slip that there's a threshold whereby public awareness cannot pass before you start bringing out disease X, for example?
Well, in his longer segment that was posted on the ZNN Telegram, it was like 20 minutes or so. I don't know how long the whole thing was with Lex. He talked a lot about how, okay, he's questioning conspiracy theories and people who believe them. I'm doing air quotes. But he's also saying, Hitler could not have risen to power, again, air quotes, if it weren't for publicity. And the role of publicity, to me, those are contradictory viewpoints. Like, to suggest that a small cabal of people are not this. He says people believe that they're the source of all evil. I don't think anybody believes that.
That's a straw man.
I don't believe it is a straw man. Nobody believes all evil is coming from a small cabal.
No,
it's
disproportionate
amount, right? Yeah. So if we give him actually the benefit of he was on a podcast and he was just overgeneralizing. And what he really meant to say was most of the evil.
Right.
Those are contradictory viewpoints that, like, he wants to hold Hitler up here as this, like,
sine qua non of evil conspiracy.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right. But on the other hand, it couldn't
possibly
happen.
Yeah.
Although publicity did play a huge role. Well, what is publicity?
What are you doing right now?
What's PR? Right. Yeah, like, what is PR? What is propaganda? Like, that is a conspiracy.
Right.
I'm sorry.
It is.
Bernays.
Absolutely.
Goebbels.
Boom.
Like, it's actually in y'all's mainline history.
Right.
That y'all taught us.
Right.
Through the Robert Maxwell, Macmillan textbooks.
Well, yeah, and what about, the whole...
Rand McNally is what I was trying to get at.
The whole small assembly of people who colluded to bring about the State of Israel. That's a conspiracy. Maybe it's more open.
I guess.
Maybe it's allowed to not be considered a conspiracy because it was out in the open.
I guess it deserves examination what you mean by small group of people. Because...
Balfour and Rothschild.
I mean, if we agree there's whatever 7 billion people on Earth, right. Like, how... When do you get above the threshold of small? Because if it's even if it's 100,000 people, which I think it's actually less. I think it's less.
Yeah.
In terms of a small cabal who has a majority. I mean, look, I think it was the Swiss Institute of Technology or something. I'd have to look it up again. But pre-ZNN, I interviewed this woman. I think she's dead now, Karen Hudis, who was a employee of the World Bank turned whistleblower. She actually, I got a chance to interview her, and she always talked about this study, this model that was drawn up by I think it's the Swiss Institute of Technology. Again, I've mentioned it before. We can look it up again. They modeled out all the interlocking boards of global Fortune 2000 companies.
Right, I've seen that graph.
And they showed, because of the interlocking nature of the boards which control these companies, that actually 47% of the entire world economy was controlled by a super entity, essentially, through the interlocking boards. Everybody knows everybody. There's only 1 degree of separation, basically.
Right.
And
that's the guild system.
Okay, that right there is a small cabal of people. And then you look at, like, you can just continue to turn the dial on the microscope.
Yeah, just do
right
up the resolution.
When you understand finance drives corporate investment, drives the capitalization of companies, drives transactions for companies, and however many, it was like 50% of the world financial system is consolidated into a tinier board subset, and you begin to get the picture that, in fact, Harari or whatever, it's fact.
Yeah,
it's just fact. It's not even a belief system.
And it's not a theory. It's an observation of reality. You know, and you can demonize the term conspiracy all you want, but you know, you could dress it up and use slightly more benign language, like conflict of interest collusion amongst actors who do not have the will of the people in mind. Like, that's observable, that's chartable, that's demonstrable fact. But again, the only pill pull that people like him can rely on at that juncture is, oh, well, you can't prove malintent very easily. These people, even if you look at, you know, quotes by Rockefeller, he really believed in transnational governance and that he was doing a good thing for the world. And, you know, Warren Buffett really does believe that all of his investment gains were due to his savviness in the market, you know. Even though both of those things are demonstrably proven false. I mean, Rockefeller knew that he himself was a money addict. I mean, when interviewed, he's the richest man in the world at the time. The journalist asks him, how much money is enough? And he's like, just a little bit more. Right. And this was a discussion I was having with my wife the other day. And it's like, you know, we stigmatize certain kinds of addiction in this society, right? Oh, and we're like allowed to look down on certain forms of addiction. But when it comes to money addictions, only gambling is bad. Not hoarding, not rigging the money printer at the central bank, not, you know, ripping people off through wage theft. You know, all that stuff is allowed. All that stuff is white collar, prestigious, honorific privileges that are afforded to certain members of the upper echelon. So it's just the whole schizophrenic, double standard, authoritarian mind control paradigm that we're in, where people are just supposed to kind of think on opposite ends of any given issue and hold them both in line as equally valid, and then have really no conclusion and just kind of be dictated to by whoever is the appointed white coat or the expert, and they get to dictate whatever reality is.
Right. So I found that study that I referenced before. It's called The Network of Global Corporate Control. It was put together by a bunch of mathematicians at the Swiss Institute, or Federal Institute in Zurich. And it looked at the boards of 43,000. What did I say? Top 2,000? They looked at 43,000 different companies, and this is the map that they basically created. Let me zoom out. So,
oh wow,
when you look at the topology of it, there is a very small core group of, and they even identify the top I don't even know how many this is. Like I was saying before, corporate control is subordinate to financial control. Right. So on top of this corporate interlocking, you have this interlocking board scenario within the finance organizations as well. And so the net is these companies, Franklin, Commerce Bank, Credit Suisse, Deutsche Bank, Barclays, UBS, T. Rowe Price, Lehman Brothers, Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Citigroup, and again, you could even look at this and be like, this is kind of a whitewash.
Right, because
these are corporate banks.
Right.
And who are they subordinate to?
Right.
The fiat privately owned central bank
consortiums.
And then again, it gets even smaller because then you're dealing with shareholders of that bank, which we're not even privy to. We this is where we might believe in a conspiracy theory because of the different family monikers that we can show were documented, i.e. the creature from Jekyll Island, but like ultimately we don't really know like which private families who you will never see in the news mentioned are controlling shareholders of that super entity, which is able to control and manipulate all these corporate banks who then control and manipulate all these corporations through finance.
And Harari's whole thing is,
but they can't do it because it's too complicated.
Right, which I think that's a total hand-wavium, Ipsy Dixit fallacy, because he's just stating that it can't exist. But even though it's difficult to show the exact full forensics on an individual addressed basis, doesn't mean that the whole structure doesn't exist.
Right.
I mean that's the fallacy. It's a hasty conclusion. He's saying that because there is some difficulty finding the locus of responsibility within this financial
the point
matrix.
Of the whole structure.
Point of the structure is to
plausible deniability and compartmentalization of information, so that you can't ever get to the bottom of which small cabal of people are actually controlling that. If such a small cabal existed, would they not, if they're smart, set up structures to protect themselves
that insulated them from scrutiny and accountability? Of course they would. That's the way.
He claims
the way common street gang mafias.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like he purports himself to be this intellectual ideologue, and that's just basic like street smarts. Like
it's like it's small scale.
It's common sense.
Small scale mafias and gangs and cartels do this. You don't think that the entire superstructure of the financial system operates in just a more highfalutin capacity of the same tactics? Of course it does. I mean, that is human nature. So no, it's not exogenous. It's not an exogenous phenomena of how power organizes itself. No, it's a directed, incentivized structure that has been refined over time. It's been fine-tuned to where there are more and more layers of insulation and the ability to keep operations going and allow a fall guy to take all the heat, allow a slap on the wrist, allow a hefty fine, allow all these different things that then absolve them of accountability. Yet they can continue everything business discussion of, you hear this data point a lot recently where basically 90% of all financial assets are owned by the top 10%. But the additional factoid that you don't hear is the 0.1% own 30% of those 90% resources. That's the factoid that you don't see. That if you take that 10% and you wheedle it down, again, up the resolution, 0.1% controls the top 0.1% controls a third of that 90%.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just the top 10% that are having it great and who are somewhat insulated from, say, current economic conditions, inflation and stuff. It's actually the 0.1%. The 1% has a little over half. So if 90% is owned by the 10% and 1% has close to half, the 0.1% has 2/3 of that half. So I mean that's wow, that's mind-boggling. So yeah, essentially what is 0.1% of 8 billion? So in other words, yeah, there's less than 8 million people worldwide that basically control a third of all property and wealth. And that's being conservative.
That I would regard in comparison to the total population, that's small group of people.
That's a small group of people.
And again, you can turn that dial on the microscope and
even more,
get
right?
even more, you know, and at the top of the pyramid is a single grain of sand. You know, so like
Yertle the turtle.
What kind of person is that?
Right.
Who is at the top?
Right.
And that's another publicity farce, Harari.
Yes, exactly.
You know, the whole royal family, and now Prince whoever has surgery, and I'm supposed to fucking care about it. Like this whole occult thespian drama, that we see all the time about who's the richest, who's the most powerful. Oh, Biden's the leader of the free world. Oh, we've got royal family over here.
Right.
We've got terrorists over there. That was another thing that kind of came out, I think, and since our last episode was or maybe we talked about it last time, the whole Guardian. No, I think it was over the holidays. The Guardian removing.
Oh yeah, the
Osama bin Laden's letter to America, where he talked about the tunnels underneath New York City and all the. No, I'm just kidding. But he did talk about the creation of Israel, which you mentioned earlier, which was
that was a coordinated effort,
a coordinated multi-generational effort that involved a lot of money and a lot of effort and a lot of military might,
a lot of
to make happen.
Closed door meetings.
Of
course.
Yeah.
So I mean, this whole idea that conspiracy is some sort of like alien or anathema facet to human activity is just
again. I asked a question about what topic are you least patient about entertaining, like some of the preconceived notions about. You know, I mentioned climate change really irritates me. Like, there's just so much wrong with it. Like, I just laugh whenever anybody expresses any kind of concern about it.
Me too. And it's very frustrating because it's become like a shibboleth. It's become like a creed that people who are otherwise, you know, relatively thinking, intelligent people have just begun to kind of recite and regurgitate.
Yeah.
You know, oh, well, you know, because of climate change, blah, 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 you know. Oh, I don't know about that line of research. That might be racist. Or, I don't know about that line of research. That could be anti-Semitic. You know, I mean, it's like, it's these blockers and this chilling effect and this blinder syndrome.
It's so crazy to consider that people have actually been arrested for questioning climate change or anything to do with the Holocaust.
Oh yeah,
and those are like
put in jail for long periods of time.
Intertwined.
Old ladies who are in their 80s.
We got a comment here on the YouTube channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. We are going to wrap up the show. Apologize, we were late, so the show wasn't as long as normal.
Maybe we'll do a follow-up here before the next
But, you know, maybe more people will watch it because, you know, we don't exactly design our content for number of views. You know, we have these long-form discussions. We need to be better about creating some shorter content to get some more people involved in the show, but we do appreciate you know, the folks who've tuned in here. But comment, my friend justified her abortion because of climate change and negative environmental impact of having children.
Yes.
And That's something we had some like debates on the official ZNN Telegram with some globetard talking about, you know, I think the debate genesis was around the flat earth subject, but somehow we got on this exterministic ideology that's really promoted vicariously through the whole climate change thing. And you or me or one of the people, you know, on our side of the fence, so to speak, we're talking about this mentality of, look, this is exterministic, this whole idea of the global warming and the greenhouse effect, and it has to do with the globe. And it's encouraging people to either not have kids or kill their kids or feel bad about having kids because it's damaging the earth. And this nimwit on Twitter was like, you know, nobody believes that. Nobody thinks that way. And it's like, do you not even know your own community? Like, we pulled up multiple articles where this same sentiment was expressed and talked about and celebrated and advocated for. And I personally have known people, not necessarily to get an abortion, but for that reason, but to like really hesitate. I actually will say myself at one point was thinking that way because I was a victim of the anti-family climate change agenda. I wasn't necessarily concerned so much about impacting the earth so much as I was concerned with finite resources, and I wouldn't be able to give this kid what they deserved, you know, or whatever. You know, you can't have too many. You shouldn't have them too young. All those tropes,
right?
I was definitely influenced by at a certain point.
You know, us early millennials, you know, we were really bombarded with that.
Totally.
I mean, and it's now even more so with the younger millennials and the Gen Zers. They're getting all the same crap.
That's why I'm
even more so now. I mean, the anti-natalism has taken on a whole new vistas.
Totally, and that's a whole other subject of like progression that we've seen literally in the last like 5 years. That situation has accelerated. But yeah, like I repudiate my earlier thinking on the matter, which is, I think it's fair to say that I was a victim of the anti-family agenda because I guess I hadn't reached an age of reason yet. I didn't know better. I wasn't educated. I was ignorant, you know. But that sentiment, that propaganda campaign to create this sentiment, it's real. It's not like this person on Twitter was saying, what are you talking about? Nobody thinks that. We're just like pro-Earth, you know. Don't want the ice caps to melt.
We're just tree huggers out here. We just like Rachel Carson, and we want sensible environmental policies.
Right. Exactly.
But it's like, okay, yeah, that's kind of like the front-facing, backpedaling, damage control thing that you're supposed to say. But at the end of the day, you're picking and choosing which populations should be encouraged to have kids.
Yeah.
And which ones are worse for the planet over others.
Yeah.
Because if you excavate all of these people who advocate for climate change, they're going to tell you, oh, we actually do need more indigenous population. We do need more. We do need more. South Pacific Islanders. You know, we need more. Heck, even more Africans wouldn't even be that big of a deal. But Westerners having kids, no, that we consume way too many resources. Our way of life is destroying the planet. You know, there's the whole
makes me wonder
genocidalism that's baked into the idea of climate change.
Other than like Japan and maybe South Korea, like they don't typically. Oh, well, I guess China. You know, they had their exterminist like one-child policy, but like that failed miserably. Right?
Yeah, they're going to go through a demographic winter here.
Yeah, like that. Yeah. Makes me wonder how much those countries give a fuck about, or like the Indians care about climate change.
They're number one population right now.
You know what I'm saying? Like they don't have any problem churning out kids.
And you never hear those representatives of India advocating for the kind of depopulation policies in India.
Right.
They'll advocate for the depopulation policies in Western countries. And in Europe,
It seems like a soft war.
It is
Soft
It
war.
literally is what it is.
It's like, look, we're too lazy in modern times to like come over there and just shoot you dead. Like,
Yeah,
we'll take it more easy, like long term. Just don't have kids.
Yeah.
Don't reproduce.
Or if you are gonna reproduce, God, it better be multiracial. That's the absolute minimum for you whiteys.
I want that olive complexion and
Cappuccino.
that great hair.
Yeah. You need that future Kalergi kind of vibe going on, where everyone's kind of a mocha latte kind of color, and
no, it'll be
we
like
don't have any kind of shared.
It'll be like when you mix the Play-Dohs together, and you just get this kind of like gray, kind of gray feeling.
Well, then that's the most ideal vector by which you can socially engineer is people who are basically rootless and truly unified, truly homogenized, truly conglomerated into a amnesiac mass, right? And that's what's happening with the migration policies worldwide. We can't go to all these other places and demand the services that we're basically guilted into giving everyone else who wants to come here, right? That's par for the course these days. It's open arms for anyone and everyone and their uncle to come to the West and replace the heritage population and intermix and get indefinite welfare. And,
I'm not endorsing the Trump wall or anything.
No, I'm not either.
But he was like very rhetorically strong on that point, and again,
he didn't really do much.
He didn't really do much.
He didn't do anything.
Because clearly the long-term strategy has remained in place, but
you saw him in 2020. I want the platinum plan for African Americans. I want to do a $500 billion spending spree for black families. It's like Trump, you're sounding a whole lot like Hillary right now.
Yeah. Once you get control of those money levers, I mean, anything's possible. I can be the philosopher king.
Exactly.
But the chickens have come home to roost in terms of that whole policy, and whatever problems existed during Trump have been amplified 100 times. I'm just thankful that.
So, do you think that they're gonna just red carpet him in? I mean, what sort of tactics do you think are under the sleeve here this year?
Well, one of our prior guests, James Iredell, he has maintained that, even shortly after Biden was ushered in. I think he was still saying, the next step is for Trump to be, red carpeted in. Basically, they're going to create the conditions to orient the majority back that direction, and the reason being, not to put words in his mouth, I hope I'm paraphrasing, but I think it deserves consideration, because they want chaos. They want that that reaction out of the still Trump deranged to be at odds with the MAGA country, so to speak. And it's a pendulum swing from one to the other, and you just got to keep that momentum going to keep the pendulum swinging. And Biden has been a complete humiliation ritual, so I just don't, right now, I don't see who the Democrats put up that could ever contend with what Trump's been largely silent the last 4 years. He really hasn't said much at all. He's just kind of waiting around almost for this to happen.
Well, the sort of messianic cloud
creating a shroud of mystery
drummed up around him. Exactly.
And people have never stopped talking about him. He's always indicated he would run again, but whether he will really just be able to walk. This is another thing I said to my wife. He was installed the first time, and Biden was installed, in 2020.
Two different kinds of installations.
And I remember
yeah.
hearing Alex Jones literally admit that there was some kind of installation that took place with Trump. Like, literally, there were military type people involved in the seizure and manipulation of servers, and Hillary was actually supposed to win based on the establishment's like selection. And his evidence at the time, I think for that was like Newsweek or whatever, had already printed up all the magazine covers with Hillary as the winner.
Right.
And I remember Alex paying credence to the idea, some sort of back channel information, that there were associates of the Rothschilds backing Trump.
Oh, yeah, I remember him saying, well, no, actually, the Rothschilds were bad, but they're actually pro-human.
Some of them.
Some of them are, and only the good ones are backing Trump. And
right. So that all, reeked to me of, okay, so an installation was had here. I might like some of the funny things that Trump says, and rhetorically some of the things that he's gesticulating, and I can't argue things were better then than they are now under Biden, but I don't necessarily associate their existence in the office as having to do anything with any of that.
Right.
They're just frontmen at the end of the day, and they're serving their role, which always is this, they want us to think in terms of like election cycles, but they're clearly thinking longer term than that.
Absolutely. They're thinking in terms of structural pushes that they want to make.
Right.
And the brand blue rolls out certain things that couldn't be done under a red regime.
Exactly.
And the red regime comes in and rolls out
it's
stuff
the right-left paradigm, which I think
right.
I think James Iredell has been on our show before. I was referencing his theory on the whole thing, which
he definitely
think
gets
pretty,
that. Yeah.
Has criticized Alex Jones for, right? Like, that he has abandoned this whole lens of, this is just Republican Democrat politics, or just right-left paradigm. Like, that they don't know how to act any different. And I mean, the best evidence I have from my own experience is that Ron Paul was basically not allowed to run in the Republican Party. He was not nominated. They wanted a lackey, and he wasn't going to be that guy. So he got, sidelined basically, and also being involved in the local Republican politics and seeing how the delegation process works and the nomination process works. It's like, guys, it's so much more rigged than you can imagine. It's
right.
And so it's the structure itself begets corruption.
Well, and my brother brought up an interesting possibility. He's like, well, what if the Team Red is really just like Team Blue B, and they disallow Trump from even getting the nomination somehow, and he runs third party and he runs independent, and that would kind of break up a lot of the two-party stuff. That could be one way that the establishment tries to like
reinvent themselves
and like head off the whole like anti-two-party stuff at the pass by propping up a kind of hybrid figure. I mean, Trump in the 90s, he was donating to the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
He was a New York Dem for most of his life.
Right.
And he then rebranded after The Apprentice and kind of turned himself into this kind of,
That's a good idea. I mean, I can't think of anybody more capable of
winning an independent ticket, right?
And not only because he can, because I know that's financially, logistically difficult to run independent, which it shouldn't be. It should be equally financially and logistically difficult as it is to run as any other party. But he could do that. He could get on the ballot, and all of that stuff. But I can't think of anybody better able to pivot his entire audience, to
an independent ticket.
He could sell that. Absolutely, he could sell that.
I think he could too,
because he could reference that past background and his his recent background, holding the presidency as a Republican, and say, the system's broken, and the system has shown that, like with the
over and over again, right?
The Trump collusion narrative and the stealing of the election. I think that's actually a pretty valid possibility as well.
I mean, I think it's kind of an outlier because the establishment may not be quite that ambitious yet.
I was going to say that they would probably, their druther would not be to do that, right? Because if they could,
that opens up a lot of floodgates.
Yeah. But it's interesting to think about.
It is because I mean, he's right in observing that the Republicans are just kind of slower Democrats. I mean, the mainline Republican platform today is not hardly any different than Obama in 2008.
Right.
It's just not. I mean, on a couple, again, superficial policy stuff, you might say that it's different, but in terms of like foreign policy and, the carrot and stick incentives within the actual campaigns and what's done to expand the office and all this kind of stuff, it's really not any different from the Democrats of the early 2000s,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the Republicans are just kind of being, they hop and skip towards tyranny, and Democrats kind of do like a sprint and a jog,
It's about creating a contrast to give you a sense of, it's the whole boiling frog thing, to give you a sense of comfort with the incremental increasing temperatures.
Yes.
Because when you go, like, say you have a swimming pool next to a hot tub, and that swimming pool is 50 degrees, but that hot tub is 107 degrees.
Ooh, that's a big difference.
When you go from one to the other, that 50 degrees is going to be freezing.
Shocking.
A lot more than if you were to just jump into the 50 degree and start warming up.
Right.
Like they want to create that contrast so that, like, the old times seem good, even though the old times were not good compared to the older times.
And in those older times, we don't actually have that good of a frame of reference for stuff that's even older than that,
right?
And that's the whole society of amnesia.
Yeah, the censorship paradigm.
Censorship paradigm, exactly, because that's what censorship creates. It creates an amnesiac society of presumption and authority worship, and that's exactly what we have today. And so the more we can abstain from acquiescing to that paradigm, and the more we can push envelopes in the little ways that we can, exposing all of these things, then this whole milquetoast hand wavium that the Scuzz army and the WEF and Harari and those kind of technocrat ilk, more and more their appeals to maintain the legitimacy of their standing will be vitiated, will be eroded, and they really won't have much of a leg to stand on. And it's unfortunately under those conditions that they really do start to get desperate and lash out, and that's when we could see something like a World War III type flare-up, because their credibility is, it's all-time lows right now. And that's one of the great things that the information age and the internet activist era has pushed, at least to a degree, is discrediting the establishment so thoroughly and so viciously that they really don't have anything else other than to truly show the cards that we know they've been using to bluff all along. And you're starting to see it come apart at the seams. I mean, in the Middle East, and the Red Sea and Ukraine, all this stuff is starting to pop off, and I think that something big is around the corner, because this kind of pressure, against the control oligarchs are ramping up to a level that it's an uncharted territory for them to an extent, because while on the one hand they have arguably the most centralization and consolidations of resources ever in the history of the world, they're also now tracked and scrutinized on a level that they haven't ever been either.
Right.
So that's why the propaganda cycles are so volatile, and they're getting shorter.
They're getting shorter,
and they're getting more absurd, and they're getting more desperate.
Yeah.
And I think that's a sign that they know that they're losing big on the historical gestalt, on the paradigm war. You know, they think they won the culture war, and they did arguably for several decades with our parents' generation. I mean, the 60s through the 90s, I mean, they basically won that war. But they're gonna, if they lose the paradigm war, that little 3 or 4 decade period can be completely reconfigured.
It's a drop in the bucket compared to the total time that we've been humans.
Yeah.
And going back to, and we'll close on this, the historical
That meme is so good.
I love it. I got a meme of Vince McMahon crying, which has been a big meme lately.
It's a really good meme.
I love it. I don't know what he was. I think he was talking about Andre the Giant or whatever. But it says, "Dad, did you know the parking meters fed directly into the temple tunnels?" And you got to see it to really get it. But that's what I was getting into, is like we talked a lot about history, that false history, this manufactured consensus through predetermined notions. Most of our time as humans have been in an oral history mode of communication, where we just told stories. We didn't have anything written, which is why we question on the show a lot the quote-unquote written history of the world and what is handed down to us by our science overlords as to how things were in the past. And that innovation of the printing press, text messaging, digital media, that's all very, very recent, all in the same timeline as this acceleration we've talked about. And but I think the new oral history almost for us is going to be memes.
Yes.
Because of the censorship paradigm that we're up
Yes.
against. We get censored. All we're doing is speaking into the microphone. And they're cataloging that. They're doing voice to text. They're doing AI and algorithmic analysis of that, making censorship decisions. And there are ways around it, but they're getting more and more advanced.
Right.
And the jury is still very much out on whether they can do it on a systematized basis with memes.
Yeah.
Because memes operate on like almost a subconscious level that
or
isn't
even like a super conscious level.
It isn't the seeing this meme and other memes often require you to have some sort of like base memory of a given thing to be able to associate with it, and that's not something necessarily that is going to be legible by an AI system.
True, because it operates actually in that world of
whatever's
ideas.
already been contributed to the digital landscape. And if there are ideas or concepts that can be communicated outside of that, it's going to be beyond their purview. So
right.
We focus on memes a lot in the show, and because they say so much. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words or whatever.
And memes are really a type of egregore.
Yeah, I would agree.
It's a type of egregore. It's not the only type of egregore, of course, but it's one that's now more accessible and mass distributed than ever before.
Yeah.
So we're actually, memes are a little gateway, a little kind of window into the world of egregores.
Yep.
And mass thought formation, conception.
And if you haven't looked up egregore, we talked about it many times on the show. Egregore. Look it up.
Egregore. It's an important frame of reference. It's part of how the world is orchestrated to a great extent, and that we pay homage to a level of consciousness that we're not fully capable of inventorying. We don't have the full purview of it, but it is there, and that's the world of ideas. And it operates, I wouldn't say exogenously, but perhaps on an inclusive kind of transcendental level with physical, biosensory existence. It's sort of a super addendum to the biophysical plane.
Right.
And it's that world of ideas and the realm of the egregores that I think is going to force the hand of the current control oligarch paradigm, and that they're going to essentially fail in trying to contain it and trying to punish those who are calling their bluff on the real crucial nitty-gritty philosophical levels that they've used to control human imagination and consciousness exploration for so long. And one of the biggest vectors of that is cosmology, and telling you what you are, where you are, why you are, and how you are. And pseudoscientific charlatanry matrix is basically a hypnosis grid. It's there to set up a basis for convincing people of falsehoods.
For deception, a basis for deception.
It's a basis for deception, yeah, exactly.
Well, with that, thank you guys for tuning in. We still got, some concurrent viewers. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, share this video once it's fully uploaded. Comment, subscribe if you haven't already.
Yeah, like it, post
visit our website, join our Telegram, check us out on Instagram, follow us, all that good stuff. And tune in next time. We'll try to have another show here in 2 or 3, 4 weeks. Yeah. And catch you on the flip side.
Peace
out.
out.
Good night.
Night.